Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos. Today's block is called House on the Hill. It finishes 12 inches. Here's the diagram, and here are 4 blocks set block to block with sashing and cornerstones. This looked better with something between them because the houses and the roofs tend to run together. So I put some sashing between it to define the block better. This is also a block from the Stitch Pink 2020 quilt, and there will be a link here to the pattern for that, to their pattern for that. There are a lot of patches, so I'll go over the patches and then the cutting instructions. Patch A is a 3-inch by 12-inch finished rectangle, and this is the roof part, this part here. We cut 12.5 inch by 3.5 inch rectangle, and we need 1 patch. For most of these, for AccuQuilt, you're going to use a strip cutter and cut them down if you don't want to rotary cut. So in this case, you would use your 3.5 inch strip cutter and cut it down to 12.5 inches. Patch B is a 3-inch finished square, and we cut 3.5 inch squares. We'll need 2 patches of the background fabric. This is for the stitch and flip on the roof. So it will be the sky part of the roof. Patch C is a 1-inch by 9-inch finished rectangle. We cut 9.5 inch by 1.5 inch rectangles. We'll need 2 patches of the background and 2 patches of the house fabric. Again, you would use your strip cutter if you're using AccuQuilt. And patch C is the background here, and then these long strips on either side of the front door. Patch D is a 2-inch by 3-inch finished rectangle. We cut 3.5 inch by 2.5 inch rectangles. We'll need 2 patches of the house fabric and 2 patches of the window fabric. So here are the windows, and here are the house fabric. Patch E is a 2-inch by 4-inch finished rectangle. We cut 4.5 inch by 2.5 inch rectangles, and we just need 1 patch. This is for the front door. Patch F is a 1-inch by 7-inch finished rectangle. We cut 7.5 inch by 1.5 inch rectangles, and we need 2 patches of the house fabric. So patch F is here along the sides of the house. Patch G is a 1-inch by 2-inch finished rectangle. We cut 2.5 inch by 1.5 inch rectangles, and we need 5 patches. This is for the house fabric, and those patches are up here, sort of like the frames above the windows. Patch H is a 2-inch finished square. We cut 2.5 inch by 2.5 inch patches, and we need 3 patches of the window fabric and 1 patch of the house fabric. So these are the 3 windows at the top, the siding, I guess, or the frame above the door. Okay. And here are the cutting instructions listed by fabric. I won't go over each one, but they're all your squares and rectangles. And it's hard to come up with a plan to cut these other than just grabbing a fabric and cut the pieces, because some are 1.5 inch strips, some are 2.5 inch strips. So strip piecing from strips might not work because they're all mixed up. But anyway, you can see as we go the pieces. Here are the patches. This is patch B, and we have 2 patches for the stitch and flip that goes with patch A, which is the roof. So we'll stitch and flip on these sides here to make the roof of the house. And then patch C is are these long rectangles for the sides of the house. Patch D are the big windows. They go here. Patch E is the front door. Here it is down here. Patch F are the sidings on the house, these 2 smaller ones here. And patch G, these 5 patches are the frames over the windows. And H are the squares, and they are the windows, and then the frame above the door. The best way to do this is to just lay out the patches. But the first thing we're going to do is take the A patch and the two B patches and do our stitch and flip. For a stitch and flip, you'll want to look at your diagram to see which direction your angles are going to go for the roof. So for stitch and flip, I've drawn a diagonal line on the back of the light fabric. We're going to place it on this end of the roof fabric because we want our angle to be like this. This is the right side of the house. And then we're going to cut off this part over here. If you take this to your machine and stitch just to the right hand side of this drawn line, we don't want to stitch on the line. We want to stitch to the right, and it gives us a little bit extra when we're folding it over after we cut it. Before I stitch that side, I wanted to show you if you're using the folded corner clipper, we take this piece and flip it over, put the right sides together. And this is the angle we want to stitch now, and we want to cut off this part over here. And what I do with the folded corner clipper is I put an X on the side that's going to get cut off because we have to turn this in order to cut it. So I want my angle to go like this, so I can do this, and that tells me put my angle like that and cut this part off. So we'll turn this like that. And here's our folded corner clipper, and we'll go to the 3.5 inch mark on here and line it up with the bottom of this square. So you've lined up the bottom, the side, the top here, and this little bitty piece right here. And I look and see this is the correct angle because I've marked it, and this is what I want to cut off. So I take my cutter and I just cut it off. What you'll have when this is finished, this will be cut off once we stitch and flip, and then we're going to sew this seam right now and then flip it over. We'll have the same thing, it's just two different methods to get the same thing. Now I've stitched both sides. This is the folded corner clipper, and I'll press these seams open and we'll get this. And for the stitch and flip, you can see my stitching is just to the right of that drawn line. Now we're going to cut it off about 1/4 inch away from the stitched line. Now you have your roof. So you'll press both these seams open and you'll have the top portion of your block. For me, the easiest way to put this block together is to just lay out all the pieces, where they're going to go. So I'm just going to look at the diagram and lay out all the pieces. Okay, now it doesn't look like anything right now, but the pieces I believe are all in the right spot. What I'm going to do is break this into columns. So let's move this over so you can see. I'm going to sew these columns here. So these are not going to be sewn. These will go together in a straight line till here. Then we'll sew this piece next to it. And then we'll sew this piece at the bottom. So these 4 pieces will be sewn together, then sew this to it, to that, and this to that. We'll do the same thing over here. Sew these 4 together, then press your seams, and then sew this piece here and this piece here. And you'll have these 2 sections done. Okay, we've got this far. Now we'll put these back here, and this can be stitched to that, and this as well. Then we'll stitch this together. Then we'll just sew these together, press the seams, and sew it to the top, and your block will be finished. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos.